Welcome back to Keepin' It Comic. I'm GoofyRhexxi. With the Fantastic Four movie on the way, I decided to go revisit the old Fantastic Four movies just to see how well they aged, and then this happened. When I tell you that those movies almost had a brother traumatized, I am not joking. And yes, I'm looking at you, Josh Trank. But then I started to think about the upcoming 2025 movie and jotted down what I think the movie needs in order to succeed. Like, what do we need to see for this movie to be successful? So I narrowed it down to 4 things. Let's talk about it. Now, first, a lot of people don't know this, but the Fantastic Four was kind of meant to be the Justice League of Marvel Comics. You see, back in the late 1950s to early 1960s, DC, which was known then as the National Periodical Publications, had a very popular line of comics that featured a group of superheroes from their line of characters called the Justice League of America. So Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were like, okay, we need our own superhero team, hence the Fantastic Four were born. Now, honestly, I don't think either Lee or Kirby anticipated the effect the Fantastic Four would have on the comic book world. First of all, the creation of the Fantastic Four comics also created what's known as the Marvel method, whereby a writer writes the stories and the artist draws around that story. It seems like such a normal thing in today's comic climate, but this was definitely not the case before then. The Fantastic Four comics were a paradigm-shifting bunch of stories that brought about the concept of a superhero family going on various sci-fi adventures and facing some big bad foes. They also started this idea of celebrity superheroes where heroes didn't care about being anonymous or having secret identities, and they made themselves known to the public. The pacing, the art, everything was on point, but more importantly, the nature of the characters was what really drove the story home. You see, the comic version of the Fantastic Four was always and still is a dysfunctional group of superheroes that tend to bicker, fight, and they hold grudges. In other words, they were a family. Marvel's first family, and that's one of the things that this movie needs in order to succeed. They need that family dynamic back. Reed Richards and Sue Storm taking up the role of dad and mom, and Johnny and Ben playing the role of 2 out-of-control kids. What happened before is that we had movie studios trying to adapt the Fantastic Four comics, but they haven't been able to get this aspect right. There was a Fantastic Four 1994 film by Constantine Film Studios, which was never theatrically released and was a ploy for the studio to retain the rights to the Fantastic Four. Then we had the Tim Story versions in 05 and 07 that had a lot of problems, and one of those problems was the overuse of superhero tropes and the need to be funny. It didn't fully explore the family dynamic. It did, I guess, slightly manage to explore some aspects of family bickering and fights. For example, when Sue Storm got mad at Reed Richards for dancing with girls at his bachelor party, or when Ben Grimm wrestled with being a stone-like monster and blamed Reed for turning him into one, or the big fight between Johnny and Ben, but it felt rushed and isolated and didn't necessarily involve the entire team. These interpersonal conflicts with real stakes and consequences were heavily ignored in the first Fantastic Four movies, where the fights get quickly resolved and everyone's all happy and kumbaya, mostly due to the limited runtime. In the Josh Trank version, the movie felt like a body horror movie. It felt like the members of the team viewed their abilities as some sort of curse. While that may be true for Ben Grimm, at least initially in the comics, it's not the same for the rest of the team. And at least Tim Story's adaptation explored some of the relationship aspects of the team. We just didn't see that in the Josh Trank version at all. Reed is not really that father figure, and he's just a kid who made a lot of mistakes in the past. There were not enough character interactions. We barely get to see a scene between Ben and Sue Storm. The Human Torch and the Thing don't even have their playful banter, and everything was just dark and gritty. The movie just didn't really feel like a Fantastic Four adaptation. Tim Story's version felt like it was trying to recreate the success of the first Spider-Man movies, while Josh's version felt like it was trying to take itself too seriously by adopting the dark and gritty Christopher Nolan approach from the Batman trilogy. We don't want that in a new Fantastic Four movie. What we want to see is characters bicker and play and be an actual family who low-key don't like each other but are there for each other and love each other deeply, and the characters properly fit into their roles within the family. Now, in the meantime, you can join the Kick family by hitting that subscribe button. Also, like the video if you're enjoying this so far. Now, next, we need to talk about the adventure side of the Fantastic Four. It's almost like the movie studios don't know what the Fantastic Four do for a living. They're explorers. They travel to new worlds, realms, and even across time. So whether it be the Negative Zone, the Microverse, or Acropolis, I want to see them traveling. I want to see them functioning as a team, exploring new worlds, and meeting fascinating characters, with the trips leaning heavily on sci-fi themes and elements. Fun fact, did you know that the Fantastic Four went to heaven? It's one of my favorite stories storylines because it's kind of bizarre. Specifically in issue number 511, when a tragedy happened with Dr. Doom and Reed had to kill the Thing. Fortunately, his brain waves remained alive in another plane of existence, which Johnny identified as heaven. So the team journeyed there, and it was in heaven that they met the one above all, whom a lot of people consider both Jack Kirby or Stan Lee to be the avatars for this character. Now, the one above all, he was portrayed as an artist whose drawings created the entirety of the Marvel multiverse. He's bigger than eternity, the living tribunal, the beyonder. He's above everything. Very few characters have ever gotten to meet the one above all, and the Fantastic Four are a part of that selective few. This is who they are. They're travelers that boldly go where no man has gone before, kind of like Star Trek, but just older. Now let's talk about this here. If I think that there's anything that the Fantastic Four movies have greatly underrepresented, it would be the villain of the Fantastic Four films. I mean, if you've only watched the Fantastic Four movies, you probably don't even know just how powerful Dr. Doom is and how important he is in the grand scheme of things. I mean, it's just funny that both Tim Story and Josh Trank's version of the Fantastic Four have portrayed him as just a power-hungry scientist. Now, while that is kind of true, that really isn't the full motivation for Dr. Doom. But we won't fully get into that in this video. What I will say though is that Dr. Doom is also a master of dark magic. The dude is on par with the likes of Doctor Strange and the Ancient One, and that is just half of it. Doom is also the sovereign leader of Latveria, his home country and base of operations. Suffice it to say that there is so much more to Dr. Doom than we've seen in these movies. All we see is this like watered down version that the team could just easily beat. Kind of disrespectful if you ask me. But that does not compare to what they did to my man, Galactus. Talked about it before and I'll talk about it again. That cloud of gas that we saw at the end of the Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer movie, that wasn't Galactus. Galactus is a freaking giant that can grow as big as a damn celestial. He's an energy guzzling maniac that eats planets for sustenance. This dude is a freaking genius that possesses the power cosmic, and his heroes are some of the most interesting characters that you will ever see, like the Silver Surfer, Tarax the Tamer, Plasma, Firelord, and so many more. These are the things that make Galactus interesting, and we didn't even get to see any of it in the Fantastic Four movies. Please, MCU, make this right. But in the meantime, shallow adaptations of the Fantastic Four villains shouldn't happen in 2025. These villains are much a part of the Fantastic Four comics, as are our four heroes. They shape and move the story forward, and they have an unbelievable amount of emotional depth that the movie just has yet to explore. Any good superhero movie knows that the villain is just as important as the hero. Sometimes the villain's story is so intriguing that the audience is even more in favor of the villain than the hero. This is why we love characters like Magneto, the Joker, Killmonger, and even Thanos' crazy ass. Respect for the Fantastic Four villains cannot be overemphasized. They need a comic accurate depiction if this Fantastic Four movie is going to have any impact. Now this last one here, I know it's already been confirmed a little bit, but I wanted to expand upon this a little bit more. And that is that I think that this movie needs to avoid the origin story hole. But let's talk about this in more detail. Now, usually the origin story is when we witness a character's origin story from the very beginning, and then the audience watches as the hero learns how to use his or her abilities. A very good example would be the Blue Beetle origin story, the first Shazam movie, Miss Marvel, so on and so on and so on. This kind of origin story format just doesn't work anymore for the superhero movies. It might have worked for movies such as Iron Man and Captain America, but it doesn't work anymore in the movie format. Now, don't get me wrong, it works well in things like animation, i.e. Spider-Verse, but it just doesn't track out in live action movies as it used to. It slows down the story and delays the action. Instead, the origin story should be more like the Deadpool origin story or Shang-Chi. This is where we get introduced to the heroes at a point where they already have some knowledge of their abilities and they are somewhat realized in their roles as heroes or anti-heroes. We don't even have to use flashbacks, which is something that was mentioned about the Fantastic Four movie. Take Spider-Man Homecoming, for example. We didn't have to see the spider biting Peter Parker or Uncle Ben dying. He just told Ned what happened and that was it. I would love to see that in a new Fantastic Four movie. I don't have to see how the cosmic rays gave them powers. I already know about that. This is a movie that's set in the 1960s. There's no need to take the story's timeline backward. They just have to reference the event that gave them abilities and move on with the story. Case closed. I don't want to see what the members did in the past. I don't want to know about their past mistakes or whatever. I want to see them act in real time. Let them make mistakes in real time and overcome whatever challenges that come their way in real time. Also, to be honest with you, I also want to see the thing say, "It's clobbering time," and Human Torch saying, "Flame on." I want to see the Invisible Girl's maturity and her capacity for good. I want to see Reed Richards' intellectual prowess heavily displayed and his ability to always make sacrifices for the good of his family, which is often to the detriment of the world. And I think that this is the route that the movie is going to go in. Plot leaks suggest that this movie is not going to have a conventional origin story, and I'm definitely all for that. We're going to be able to meet the first family, and they're already going to be realized as superheroes, and I think that that's going to be pretty dope. Now, one of the things that I discussed already here is talking about Galactus and how I would like to see the Fantastic Four movies shape these villains in a better light. So check out this next video here where I talk about how Galactus actually could be a Celestial and how his work might actually shape the entire Fantastic Four movie and Avengers movies moving forward. Like and subscribe for more here on the channel. And as always, guys, thanks so much for kicking it with Keepin' It Comic.